Is this the best Indian team that you've seen adapt to conditions, especially away from home?
Yeah, I think it probably is. And that's one of those man of the match decisions where actually, if you're the man making the decision, you'll be going, not quite sure, 50 this, one is, and you go, all right, okay, Rohit Sharma. And there's nothing wrong with that choice because Rohit produced some very, very fine batting.
Yeah, having a different conversation, David. Come to think of it, if England took their chances in the slips and caught better, it would have been a different narrative altogether.
Well, it could have been, you're right. And this is something which, you're very right to bring it up. Cricket.com is the place to be to keep in touch with this fabulous series between England and India. We have just the one game still to go. Anything could still happen. So the only place to watch it, the only place to hear the right views is on cricket.com.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Hang on, Avanish. Yeah, hi, how are you?
Oh, well.
For some reason, these were connected a moment ago, and now they're not. Let me just sort that out. Yeah, sorry to keep you like this. Thank you very much for staying up into the early hours.
No worries. I think our subscribers and our viewers were waiting for you. They hit us up in the comments wondering where David Gower was. Was he in hiding after the loss?
Well, we can play on that. Yes, tell him I had to go and lie down for a long time, for 2 days.
I'll pass on that message. Right, ladies and gentlemen, it was 50 years ago that India secured their first win on England shores in Test match cricket and eventually seeing a Test series win as well. And then one fine balmy day later at the Oval again, it was India who produced history to go 2-1 up, and it's capital punishment in many ways when we take a look at what India did at Lord's and now south of the river at the Oval as well. We have, of course, David Gower, the former England captain, who's red-faced right now, review and reflect on what's been truly another day 5 heist. David, would you suggest that?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I like your phrase, capital punishment. That's very, very apt. Very clever, I like that. Very clever. Yes, I mean, this pleasure. This was a game where I'll confess straight away, this will colour our impressions, but I was nowhere near London at all during this Test match. I was way up north doing other things, other invitations. So I had to listen, for instance, on the radio to that great radio commentary we've known for so many years, and had to sort of try and get the impression of what was going on in between doing other things. And you're right, all the key moments went the wrong way for England. All the key moments went the right way for India. There's some impressive performances again. You can probably list them very quickly. The key ones, Rohit Sharma finally nailing that overseas century. And from that point of view, I'm very happy for him. It'll be a big relief to him because he's played so well for so much of the series and just not made that one big score. And then for India to finish it off, as you say, a bit of a heist on the 5th day. That was very impressive because I was, the previous day, I was up north, as I say, in north of England, listening on a car radio and just listening when I could to see what's going on. And all the chatter, all the talk on the radio was about the pitch still being flat, the way India had batted through the second innings, pointing to the fact that there were plenty of runs in the pitch then. And that oval pitch, does tend to last pretty well. So everyone on radio was doing the mathematics about how many overs England would have, the scoring rate needed, which is going to be sort of 2.8, 2.9, that sort of thing. And if you just tick along nicely, of course, you can just edge your way towards even a very big target, even a very unlikely target, given that it was batting fourth. So there was this air of rather sort of flippant optimism going on in the radio commentary box. And I was listening thinking, well, yes, whoever says that, let's face it, batting fourth is never easy. The psychologies of batting fourth are never easy. A couple of wickets go down and you start to worry. But as it happens, that optimism was fueled by another opening partnership, which left England none down at the end of the 4th day. So an entire day to make some runs with all 10 wickets in hand. And it's one of those conversations I remember in dressing rooms on those rare occasions where you have that sort of opportunity. Everyone talks about responsibility. Everyone says, right, every one of you batsmen, take responsibility. Be the one to try and win the game. But of course, what happens normally is that whatever the start, if a couple of wickets go down, the doubts start to creep in. And I guess that's what we saw on the 5th and final day. So the heist was then completed rather quicker, actually, than I think even people feared.
How did you view it? Because at the end of the day, India produced something remarkable to manufacture 10 wickets on that surface. It was a hard doing, but they showed that.
Yeah, I mean, the two men, Jadeja and Bumrah.
Yeah.
I really, I mean, again, I have to rely sometimes on other people's opinions just to get a second opinion, as it were. But I agree entirely. Michael Atherton in the Times, who I respect immensely, was writing about Bumrah, and don't take this wrong, emulating sort of the bowling feats of the great Pakistanis, of Wasim Akram, of Waqar Younis. So on a wearing pitch with a worn ball, getting reverse swing in the right lengths, getting reverse swing, and making life just tough for batsmen. And that, of course, should be taken as a huge compliment, because those two were absolutely outstanding and won games. I mean, I've seen them win games in half a session or one session, at the end of test matches where the ball is reverse swinging very, very potently. So to be compared to them, I think is high praise indeed. So Jasprit Bumrah deserves that. And to get through the defences of batsmen who'd look good during, I mean, for instance, Johnny Bairstow is one example who, I'm a bit of a Bairstow fan. And although he hasn't made a big score yet in this series, and who knows what's going to happen in the final game, but he's looked for most of it up until that naught in the second innings at the Oval. He's looked for most of it as though he's been in control of his game, enjoying his cricket. He's looked determined and he's looked pretty well organised. So if you get through a man like that and get him out for naught when a run chase is on like that, and if you get Joe Root, Joe is absolutely the key. And you can imagine how important it is, say, in Indian team meetings, whatever they say about trying to get Joe Root out, they will look at that for hours and hours and hours, because they know ever so well that Joe Root is the key to any England batting innings. Whatever you say about the opening partnership, whatever you say about Pope getting his 80 in the first innings, so there are signs, whatever you say about Milan, for instance, in the previous test match, getting good runs. Everything seems to hinge on Joe Root. And you can imagine, again, if Joe goes quietly, if Joe goes quickly, you can imagine the psychology in that England dressing room in this current era. But between Bumrah and Jadeja, they just found the magic formula, and really, pick the lock. If you whatever you want to, you want to continue the analogies to do with heists and things being stolen. They picked the lock of so many wickets so very quickly that the door was wide open, and there they were, so piling their way into the bank, taking all the money, going home to spend it, and just enjoying the victory.
Enjoying the victory indeed. I mean, we look back on day one, 122 for 7, 127 for 7. What about even Moeen Ali in many ways when he threw his wicket away? Those are two commanding positions, you feel? I mean, from some strength to throw it away.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, of course, the big irony about this whole game, let's face it, is that, there we were talking just a few days ago about Ashwin, the great man, Ravichandran Ashwin. He must get a game at the Oval where he's already taken wickets this year in county cricket. No way. It seems that Virat and the team management have been very happy to keep Ashwin on the sidelines. He must be mixing a very good gin and tonic or something in the dressing room, because that's where they want him, apparently. And the man who comes in, Shardul Thakur, who is like so many squads, India have fine backup, as he proved. So he comes in, smashes it all around the park, just when it looks like India are going to be bowled out for a very small total. And it's one of those pivotal moments. Okay, it wasn't a big total in the end, but it was a much better total than it might have been. So you have a little bit of that thing called momentum going the wrong way at the end of the innings as far as England are concerned. Then they have chances, even despite the fact that Joe Root was out relatively cheaply. They get Pope in, he starts to make the runs he's promised for so long, and they had a chance to go bigger and better. And that shot that Moeen played, I suppose you can look at all sorts of players. You can compare him to someone sometimes like Kevin Peterson, played big shots at the wrong time and up it goes in the air, and people are just disappointed because the situation needed something different, and the situation needed, even Moeen to get another, say, 20, 30. All changes the balance of the game a bit. And there are all sorts of very good... In fact, Rohit Sharma, I mean, going back to Rohit, let's face it, he's been accused over the last 12 months or so, sometimes playing shots that he shouldn't do, getting out when he shouldn't do. And yet we're all praising him quite rightly for the way that he's played in this series, because he's been very consistent. And as I say, the 100 sort of tick that little box for him and will give him even more confidence for the final game. But those little moments, so if you say that India got, say, 40, 50 too many, if you say England got 30, 40, even 50 less than they should have done, and the maths changes. The whole situation of the game changes. But that is why every side in Test match cricket around the world knows that it's never, there is never a moment to relax. There's never a moment you can say, oh, we've nearly done the job. Let's just put our feet up for a moment, come back in a second, and we'll finish it off. You have to be relentless. And so all the great sides in history, the West Indies in the 80s, the Australians in the 90s, Bradman's Invincibles way back, all the great sides have been able to keep the pressure on relentlessly. And that's what, in a sense, actually, it's a sense that, let's face it, both teams at times during the series have managed to let that pressure slip at times. Hence, we have a scoreline of 2-1, nothing more than that, nothing more dramatic either way than that. But this does give the advantage to India with that one game still to come.
Okay, David, it's a couple of interesting points you mentioned there, but I want to ask you about Kohli and his tactics. There have been a lot of people, of course, giving him slack for his leadership out there. Maybe he doesn't have that sort of tactical nous that other skippers have had, even in the IPL with Rohit Sharma. I think the comparisons are always there. What did you make of Virat Kohli and his captaincy, especially in day 5? Nasser Hussain and Com said that he passed with flying colours. Do you concur with that?
Well, I mean, let's face it, when you win a game by 150 runs, and the sort of game we saw where, there are so many aspects to captaincy, but the sort of game we saw where you see the ebbs and flows, where you see the game going in different directions on different days. India looking as though they were struggling on day 1, coming back strongly by the time they'd finished the end of their second innings. England looking as though they were dominating in the first innings, and then, finding that India could fight back. So you have all these ebbs and flows. And one of the trickiest things as a captain, actually, there's one other point first. One of the things, of course, as a captain, what you're doing, which people don't see. So it's not one of those bits on the field where you're waving your arms and putting people in places and encouraging them and shouting. What you don't see is what goes on in the dressing room. So, for instance, during that second innings, it's not for me to say. I'm not quite sure. I can't be sure what was going on. But Virat has that whenever you see him on the balcony or in the dressing room, through the long lens of a television camera, he seems to be enjoying himself. He seems to be relaxed. He sometimes seems nibbling at food and whatever it might be. So it's all about the atmosphere in that room. Is it a confident room? Is it a comfortable room? Is it a relaxed room? Is it a determined room? All these things come in. And that is one of the most important jobs of a captain, to help create the atmosphere in the room. And that's helped by the coaches. So it's not just a one-man band, it's the coaches, Ravi Shastri, of course, who was taken out of the action with COVID. But all these guys who are part of that management team are so important to creating that atmosphere. So that is part of it. And so when they were compiling, 466 in the second innings, that atmosphere in that room must have been important. The backing for Rohit, the backing for Rahul, the backing for Pant when he gets his 50, which is, that was different. That's another little turning point for an individual and for the team. But then when you get on the field, of course, everything you do is visible. So the bowling changes, the field changes, the reactions to near things, the appeals, the reviews, all these things. You have a spotlight, you have a camera on you at all times. And that's when that's when it is so visible, and when it counts when you're trying to win a game. So if you get to the end of the day like that, as they did, and you've described it as the heist already, but when you've made that heist successfully and you've got that victory by 150 something runs, well, that's a very, very good day for a team and a very, very good day for a captain. And getting people to bowl into the rough, just think about that. Where's that little bit of advantage? Okay, you find a little bit of something on a pitch like that. If you bowl in the middle of it, there's nothing. If you use that little bit of rough, there's something which you can just trouble both left and right handers with. Bumrah with the old ball and keeping the new ball back at the end there. Well, these are all things that captains like to do and like to try. And the sad thing, of course, for some captains is that they can have all the right ideas, sometimes at the wrong time, but they can have all the right ideas, and the way the game goes, if it doesn't quite snap into place and the wickets don't quite fall, or the edges don't quite get taken, or the catches drop short, wherever it might be, you end up wicketless. But that performance on the final day, that, as I say, to have that result in the bag so definitively, I think that's a big tick.
Yeah, and who knows, because at the end of the day, they've showed their colours down under. They've showed now, of course, that they can win in England as well. And if they go on to win in Manchester, that'll be some statement from this Indian team. Just to finish it up with them, and before we ask you about your man of the match, I know it was Rohit Sharma. I don't know if you agree or disagree. Just to finish in India, is this the best Indian team that you've seen adapt to conditions, especially away from home?
Yeah, I think it probably is. I think when we started looking at the series before a ball had been bowled, we acknowledged that, for instance, this is the best array of Indian seam bowlers that we will have seen in this country ever. And again, the people that have come in, gone out, so the changes that have been made haven't made a negative difference to the side. So, Thakur coming in and picking up wickets at the right sort of time, that is a benefit. That's a positive. And to have someone coming in, picking up wickets, making those runs, obviously is vitally important. So you've got a good hand of seam bowlers, so you can make these changes without weakening the team. Any team that can leave out Ashwin consistently and still win games must be a very, very good team, because he is just one of the world's outstanding performers, and yet there he is mixing drinks and patting people on the back and saying well played without being able to influence games himself. And the fact they've got runs at the top of the order, so many things have fallen into place. Yes, Leeds was completely the opposite, and you can see, and the one thing that keeps England, I guess, hopeful of Old Trafford and hopeful of drawing the series is you can see that there are weaknesses, there are vulnerabilities, and that's what makes the game interesting. If you have sides like those sides I mentioned just now, the West Indies in the 80s, the Australians in the 90s, where they always seem to have an answer to a problem. So if ever they were in trouble, West Indies had fast bowling, the Australians had Warner McGrath, both sides had fabulous batting, but if ever they were in trouble, for instance, if a batting lineup for some reason didn't get a big total, the bowling took over. So they always had ways of getting out of that trouble. And that's what great sides do. That's what great sides are. So if there are any vulnerabilities left, they might still come out at Old Trafford, and that can apply to either team, to be honest. But yes, you'd be much happier being India, having finished that game off, having battled through from not a great start on day one. You'd be much happier being India coming through that, winning the game by 150 odd, going to the last game with confidence, maybe the odd place up for debate, of course, for Rahane, for instance. And you say, right, we have the initiative. All we need to do now, and this takes me back to, 1985, when I was leading England against Australia. And we had a very similar situation, a longer series, 6 matches, but we arrived for the final game 2-1 up, 1 to play, with the feeling that the Australians that year were starting to tire, that they'd been competitive through the first 4 games, had let it slip in the 5th. We'd taken advantage there, but they were starting to tire. And if you get off to a good start in that final game, that really does give you a very strong psychological advantage. So, for instance, as a possibility, India batting first at Old Trafford, where it's likely to be a perfectly good pitch, I'd say, with a bit more, maybe a bit of pace and bounce. That's what they have done there. And it's likely to offer some turn as well. But if you get off to a good start and get some runs on the board in the first innings, that will settle all the nerves, and that'll put England under immense pressure.
Yeah, a couple of things I just want to come back to you and reiterate, but I urge all you guys back home to subscribe to the YouTube channel watching this right now. We're nearing 10K, and it's for you guys right now that we're bringing this content to you, and there's so much more during the IPL as well, and we'll also get David's thoughts on the 5th test post that, and there's so much more content this week. We apologize, I've had a dodgy back, so bear with me. It's as brittle as the England batting lineup. There's just jokes over there. But the serious stuff, we would actually be having a different conversation, David. Come to think of it, if England took their chances in the slips and caught better, it would have been a different narrative altogether.
Well, it could have been, you're right. And this is something which, you're very right to bring it up, because, again, everyone expects when you see the top players in the world, the batting and the bowling is what grabs the attention, of course. Big scores, 5-wicket hauls, they're the things that get put on, on the boards in dressing rooms to mark the great achievements in the game. But yes, you're right. Drop catches, missed run-outs, all these things at crucial times. You can sometimes absorb the odd one, but we all lost count of the drop catches and and the mistakes in the field. And is that a sign of weakness? Is that a sign of something missing? Is it a sign of lack of practice? Is it a sign of lack of confidence? Is it a sign of what? I don't know. But it's been so important over the years. And if you look at the ratios, the best teams, again, have good ratios in terms of the chances offered and the chances taken. So if you've got a ratio of, say, 80% of catches offered and taken, then you're going to win matches because you're taking the right sort of chances. Everyone expects the odd one to go down. The half chances, sometimes they stick, sometimes they fall to the ground. When you're not seeing it, I mean, poor old Rory Burns got, I suppose, some sympathy, but when you're not actually seeing it, and I've known the Oval described as a bad seeing ground before, even from my era, even the greats like Mr. Botham. Ian was occasionally unsighted or occasionally a little slow to react because, didn't quite see that. And he was one of the great slits fieldsmen of all time. So there is that, but that tends to happen at all international grounds because of the fact you've got a big crowd in. But those chances need to be taken. And if you give someone, to use the obvious example, if you give someone like Rohit Sharma in this form chances, to have another go, and he hasn't got many on the board at that stage, and he ends up getting 120 odd. Well, there's your maths again. There's your proof that the catches that you drop will lose you matches as much as the catches that you catch will win you matches.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you a little bit more about the catches because we saw it earlier in the summer with New Zealand and how brilliant they were. I mean, just generally all over the world they catch well, but we saw how they catch in England. We saw India at times in the series blow hot, blow cold with their catches. But England, is it a case of changing personnel in their slip cordon? Is it just they're not right technically? What are the flaws?
Well, okay, this comes back to so many things. Partly, if you're playing regular 4-day cricket and you're in a position regularly, for instance, just to use Rory Burns as the example, he's not necessarily, well, first of all, he hasn't been playing 4-day cricket for a while. Secondly, he's not always at slip anyway. When he plays for Surrey, as far as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong. And therefore, you're putting a man in a key position who basically hasn't had the match practice doing that job. And so, yes, there has been a change of personnel, but people like, for instance, Overton, who is, he's a good catcher. It's not unusual, but it is slightly unusual. It's not impossible to have a good, tall, fast bowler in the slips taking catches. Bob Willis, my old mate, my late lamented mate, great guy. Did a lot of close catching in his early days before they sort of put him out to grass in the deep. And the right people with the right reactions and the right techniques, getting your hands in the right place, the right way up, that sort of thing. And of course, seeing the ball. Let's face it, you're very unlikely to catch a ball you haven't really seen properly. It is possible, but it's unlikely. So it is a question of familiarity in the role. And like batting and bowling, you hit good form and you can hit bad form. If your confidence drops in the field, you end up being either with the captain saying, right, get someone else in a second, and off you go to cover or mid-on or mid-off or something. So that's your threat. But if you lose confidence in your catching, it can be a long old wait for the next chance to get your confidence back up again. But of course, all these sides spend time. For instance, now in the gap between these games, and we've got great weather at the moment. I hope it lasts through the final test match as well. But in the gaps between these games, these guys go off and they train and they practice. And there will be people cutting balls on the outfield, wherever they're training these couple of days. And they'll be trying to up the ratio of catches taken. And it'll make a difference. It does make a difference. Every time you see a great catch taken, that Bairstow grab at second slip one-handed, it lifts the mood. Those are the moments that bowlers love because all their hard work. You see a catch go down, you see shoulders slump, and a bowler has to. He's got a minute to get himself back up again, get back to the end of his mark, pretend nothing's happened, and just bowl his heart out. If you see a great catch taken, you don't need to spend all that physical, mental effort getting yourself back up because someone's done it for you, and your confidence as a bowler goes up. So. All these things, I find it fascinating, but all these things are so important to the well-being and the success of any team.
Yeah, and Jimmy Anderson knows best because there's a number going around that he could have perhaps been touching Murali's record of test wickets if England got better since his 10 years in England cricketer. So that just tells you a picture. Finally, we have to talk about Rohit Sharma, the man of the match, according to you, or possibly not. Just a couple of fun facts for you and the viewers watching this. Now, he's got 8 test match centuries, and all 8 have come in a winning cause. His first one away. He's also faced the most amount of balls in a series in his test career with this particular series, over 700 balls, and likewise with KL Rahul. Did you see Rohit as an obvious man of the match choice, or do you think someone like Shardul Thakur came up with a better impact performance?
No, Thakur was a big contender, I'm sure, because again, the things we've talked about on this show. You're coming in, making those runs in the first innings, picking up Root, for instance, picking up more runs in the second innings when, let's face it, when you're trying to make a big total even in the third innings, every run counts. Every 50 partnership is important. And if you'd been, sort of 70, 80 runs short of the eventual total 466 in that third innings, that psychology then changes for England, batting fourth, maybe with an opening partnership like they got, and suddenly the whole thing looks different. So the Thakur input was vital. And that's one of those man-of-the-match decisions where actually, if you're the man making the decision, you'll be going, not quite sure, 50 this, one is, and you go, all right, okay, Rohit Sharma. And there's nothing wrong with that choice because Rohit produced some very, very fine batting. So, that was the linchpin, that was the lead into that third innings. But yes, Shardul Thakur had a very good claim, if not to grab that man of the match award, at least to share it. But of course, that sort of thing doesn't happen. The odd Olympic, high jump medal can be shared, but very rarely do you end up. And if you ever do, someone shouts at the man of the match adjudicator for not making a proper decision. So you never really share it. You just have to say, actually, you have to fall back on that modern thing, which is someone, you might be holding a man of the match award, but says it's all about the team. And in fact, on this occasion, it was very much about the team coming together and finishing the game off and deservedly going 2-1 up.
Right, so 2-1 up and all roads lead to Manchester. It's going to be a tasty weekend, I'll tell you, because Old Trafford will witness India take on England. But of course, Cristiano Ronaldo, and I'll go to be keeping a keen eye on that, which is Saturday. But unfortunately, this is cricket.com. All the football can probably go on the other websites. Finally, just to finish up, we urge you guys to subscribe back home. Your pick of the test match, David, just to finally a one-word answer. What do you enjoy the most throughout the course of the 5 days?
What did I enjoy most? I'll tell you what I enjoyed most, and this is not a direct answer. I enjoyed some fabulous hospitality in the north of England with some really good friends. All of them keen to see what happened in the test match. So whatever we were doing, we were out in the field doing things outside, but whatever we were doing, we were keeping an eye on mobile phones, on whatever devices we had. So actually, my memory of that test match goes back to fabulous hospitality we had up north. And I will save, because I'm going up to Old Trafford, I will be there for certainly the first 3 days. I will have a much more hands-on, eyes-on view of what's happening in that fifth and final test match.
I mean, great to see you, great to chat with you, and hopefully you can give us more insight heading into that test match. Now, we will do a preview of the fifth test with David. I think on Thursday we're going to be shooting. Hopefully all goes well, and we'll put it out immediately after. Right, it's been a pleasure, David. It's 2-1 India. You call 2-2. If England win, it is what you say. Hopefully it's the other way around. 3-1 from my side.
At least I can say to you all that my prediction is still viable. I'm not entirely confident that the odds are in its favour, but we have seen a bounce back. That bounce back ability we talked about before Leeds from England before, and it's the sort of game where these things do happen. So yes, at the moment, as we speak, I can smile and say yes, it could still easily be 2-2.
And who knows, it could be 2-2. We'll join you for that in due course of time.
Right. Cricket.com is the place to be to keep in touch with this fabulous series between England and India. We have just the one game still to go. Anything could still happen. So the only place to watch it, the only place to hear the right views is on cricket.com.
Cheers. Thank you so much. I mean, you're just a master at it. I should really let you run the show the next time around, and I should just sit like a little plant in the corner.
No. All right.
Yeah, just thank you so much. Take care.
All right, great. Good luck with the hair.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Right.
Bye.
Okay. Take care.
Bye. There you go. David Gower, just absolutely fantastic on this late show with me, Avanish Hegde on cricket.com. And it's been a fun time reflecting on what's been an oval heist beyond proportions.